Okay, so as I mentioned in the previous video, I wanted to make another video about spirituality, in which I discuss some ideas from Carl Jung. I think I've made several videos on the subject, but it's worthwhile. This is something that I mention usually in my introduction to spirituality, that I heard from Rabbi Bartzadok from koshertorah.com. He's famous because he's on the TV show Ancient Aliens. And Jung basically said that there is a collective subconscious. And how did he find this? What is he basing this claim on? Is that he's interviewed people from various cultures, religions, ethnicities, languages, countries who are diagnosed with mental illness, and they all seem to be describing similar things, even things that are not part of their culture, still wind up in the psychosis of various people of all different countries and religions and so forth, or none at all. I want to preface this, what the significance of this is, as follows. There was a case in Africa, a UFO sighting of several hundred students in a school, and they all described the same thing. And people who study the subject say that this is one of the most credible sightings, mainly because they don't have in their culture the idea of extraterrestrials, flying saucers, the science fiction that we have in Western society. In this particular community, they had no exposure to these things. Therefore, they had no preconceived notions. They had no reason to make claims like this that are so similar to claims made in other cultures where they do have these as part of the culture of the community. Obviously, if someone is going to Pine Bush, New York, and expecting to see a UFO, and they see a plane, and maybe the plane is acting, they might chalk it up that it's a UFO. But if because they're expecting to see something like this, they're planning to see something. That's why they're going there. And however, if they're coming from some other someone who they don't have this part of the culture, it's rather it lends a bit more credibility to it. Doesn't mean that there are no UFOs in Pine Bush. I personally do believe I've seen things that I couldn't explain in that area personally. But that's not the point of what I'm saying there. I saw stationary lights, basically hovering in the sky, not moving in a way that I would describe as unidentified aerial phenomenon. Can't really say it's flying. Not even sure if it's an object or not. But that's not the point what I'm saying here. The point what I'm saying is that these countries where they don't have this as part of their culture, there's something to be said about this. And so too, with this description of the collective subconscious, Jung is describing specifically that similar things are experienced whether or not these things are part of the culture. And so what I often say when I'm giving this introduction to spirituality is that there are three possibilities here. One possibility is Jung is wrong. And there could be other possibilities, but these are three that come to mind to me. One is that Jung is wrong. Either he's biased, or the people who are reporting things that are not true, or his findings are just wrong. It's possible. We don't know what's in these people's minds. The next possibility is that it's something inherited in the DNA. Now, evolutionary theories, would discuss these type of issues, but there are two major evolutionary theories: are the Lamarckian school and the Darwinian school. The Lamarckian school has been totally debunked, and the Darwinian school less and less is not as debunked as the Lamarckian school. But the Lamarckian school would suggest that, there's something in the DNA based on what was inherited based on some experience. Pretty unlikely. More likely would be the Darwinian approach would say there was something inherent, natural, that certain specimens had and other specimens did not, and somehow having these experiences makes one more fit to survive. For example, psychologists will generally tell us that the fear factor is a major aspect of the basic, Darwinian response. That if someone, and that's why people, have fears, and fears are very common, and people, in a way, enjoy, scary movies and stories and things, and feel the feeling of fear of it is basically because the person who was afraid would run away from the lion, and the one who didn't have this fear factor would get eaten by the lion, and so therefore those who had the fear factor were more fit to survive, and it could be earlier in the genealogy some point that this was inherited. And obviously we see this as a basic instinct, particularly among animals that are prey to predators, rabbits and deer and things. They run away quite quickly and they don't really think about it. So it's possible that similarly this experience of the collective subconscious could be something inherited, although it's less clear what the purpose would be as opposed to the purpose would be, and it could therefore be totally organic within the brain. I'm talking about deer. There's some deer crossing the street right now, right in front of me. So I better slow down. This one was smart enough to stop. I think that's the same one I saw over there. It looks kind of the same. But we could go a little bit further and discuss how third possibility would be that indeed these people are experiencing something that's real, something that's outside of our five senses, a spiritual world, beings such as angels, demons, jinn, ghosts, whatever you want to call them, that these are indeed very real beings that exist on some other plane, whether it's another dimensional plane, another spiritual plane, whatever it is. And this is science basically measuring and recognizing the truth of things that go beyond our five senses. Obviously, among the scientific, in order to be accepted in the scientific world, it has to be repeated and demonstrated according to the scientific method. Jung certainly felt that he has been able to repeat it. The question is if others have been able to repeat it as well. And it seems there are others who make claims of repeating such things. as far as this is concerned, so we could say, indeed, there is a possibility of a spiritual, of the supernatural, being something that's actually real. Obviously, it's still registering in our brains, and so therefore people who are mentally ill or exposed to drugs or other things might be more prone to experiencing these things in a way that others are not. But all that being said, most people do experience these type of feelings of beings being around them, even people who are healthy, and or they have experiences and dreams and so forth, and these things very, very well may be real and beyond our five senses. Quantum physics certainly lends credence to the possibility of living in a multi-dimensional universe, a multiverse, if you will. And so all of these questions, they are distinct possibilities that exist, that the supernatural exists. I personally do believe it. And again, these things are registering in the brain. Just like our five senses register in the brain, so too the extrasensory perception of what we could call the supernatural, which might be totally natural. Like the Chassam Sofer says, and Lahavdil, Buddhists say the same thing. There's nothing really supernatural. Everything is totally natural. And it's just that science hasn't gotten there yet. And at some point, things that we perceive to be supernatural are actually, like one of my patients said, supernatural. They're more natural than we are, and the nature that we experience with our five senses is. All of that being said, it doesn't necessarily mean that what you're contacting is any good. Just like our interactions with human beings can be positive or negative, so too our interactions with beings that exist on other realms can be positive or negative. And obviously, we run into bad people, and we can run into bad spirits, and sometimes bad people pretend to be quite good, and so too the bad spirits could pretend to be. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily embodiments of evil the way that it's generally taught in the West, but rather that they are selfish and they have their agendas, and for the most part, like Rabbi Bart Sadok teaches, for the most part, spiritual beings who have anything positive to give us really don't care that much about us, and are kind of aloof from us, and anything that we could gain from them, there's really nothing there. And the beings that will communicate with human beings generally have a negative agenda, and will use that agenda to take advantage of us. Perhaps they see as much as we see animals. So if we see animals as a food source, cows to milk or to take meat from, and so too many of these spiritual beings see human beings as sources of energy, of food, just something to eat. Doesn't mean they're actually eating our flesh, but they might be benefiting in some way from our energy, from our emotions, from our even perhaps bodily fluids, who knows, even from our bodily waste. there are traditions like that. You know, I've been taught that's one reason why Judaism teaches that even if you enter a bathroom and don't touch anything, you should wash your hands after leaving, to remove the spiritual influence of demonic forces, and all the more so after using the bathroom, not only for cleanliness but for spiritual cleanliness. So thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, all the best.